everybody, and welcome to our Journey Into Nyx complete set review. I'm Evan Irwin.
I'm Brad Nelson.
All day, and it's time to talk about some Magic cards. You ready to talk about some Magic cards?
I'm pretty excited to talk about some Magic
God,
cards.
this set is freaking awesome. And we're going to start with Aegis of the Gods, a vintage playable creature in a set released in 2014.
I guess I didn't even think about that, mostly because I don't know anything about vintage.
Well, I mean, you know, I read a Brian DeMars article just like everybody else, and like, you know, it stops the Storm decks and stops even Oath decks that target players, which I thought was cute. Just one of those things where you look at it and it is True Believer, and True Believer was fine, but this is actually better because it gives you hexproof and doesn't just say that you can't be the target of spells or abilities. It's easier to cast and ultimately still bashes in for 2 just like True Believer did. But it was surprising to me that it can actually go that far back into Magic and be that powerful.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is a powerful effect to not be able to get tendrils out or a lot of things even in Legacy. And just being 1 white as opposed to double white like True Believer just is a strict upgrade. I guess this creature can, you know, get disenchanted if there's effects like that, but that's not a real thing in most old formats.
Right. You know, they're going to bring their Demystifies next to their Black Lotus.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of like sort of more recent formats, not going to be as impacting. You know, in Legacy, even Legacy didn't play True Believer. I don't think this is necessarily going to make it there. In Limited, it's a fine man. Like, this is a 2-drop that you're going to play and enjoy. And, and we'll randomly save you from various things like the red font or whatever we'll get to later.
I mean, the issue with this format, to be honest, is a lot of things just say opponents now as opposed to target opponent.
It's true.
So that's going to be a thing. But it will stop a Gray Merchant, which is really good because Gray Merchant's super annoying and limited. And it is just a quick early body. So I think you might see it here or there, especially if Thoughtseizes gets really powerful.
Right.
But the problem is Thoughtseizes comes down before this card.
Of course it does.
But Lifebane Zombie is a big one.
It is. I mean, you know, I don't know if you sort of metagame that hard against a Lifebane Zombie.
I don't know. I mean, we better start metagaming pretty hard against a Lifebane Zombie because Mono Black has won like 6 of the last 9 tournaments.
Well, there's that, you know, and Johnny's really sweet, and green-white decks are probably going to get even better or more played. Yeah. So I'm not against it. I'm just saying, you know, ultimately he's fine. He's not going to be amazing limited. You know, you're not going to slam down this guy first pick or anything, but he'll probably make your decks every time.
Oh, for sure.
As a 2-mana 2/1, if nothing else. Johnny's Presence, our first Strive card, which is the weird marrying of Replicate and Multi-Kicker.
Yeah.
Together. The weird, you know, like every mechanic is some form of kicker-esque, as Mero has explained. And this is a common, and B, it's a huge, ridiculous limited blowout. And what we'll see, I think, as the theme here for Strive cards is that they are huge, ridiculous blowouts in limited.
Yeah, I mean, they can be played, they're just combat tricks that can be played for their pure value, and they'll be fine. I mean, we've had cards that just give, like, +1/+1 and Indestructible, or Lifelink, or First Strike,
and that's
or something for 1 mana, and now this has a huge upside, gives Indestructibility, which is a big thing in limited, especially it'll stop, like, a bunch of removal spells, it'll, like, stop Wrath effects even in standard. Like, I thought about putting one of this in like a standard sideboard, like just for how powerful 1 mana is to keep 1 guy alive from removal spell, and for 4 mana you can protect yourself from a Supreme Verdict on like the 2 guys in play.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of fights with Boros Charm in that regard.
Well, it's the 5th Boros Charm.
Yeah, it would be your 5th Boros Charm, you know, but you could also play the 3 mana, your guys are indestructible, and then populate.
Oh, Rootborn Defenses?
Rootborn Defenses, thank you. You know, you could play that as well. You know, it's interesting that this can be played both defensively and offensively, which makes it that much more powerful when they're just like, all right, kill your dude. And you're like, nope, thanks. Because you have 1 white mana open now. You can add more mana if you like, but it's really good on it and against it.
Oh, and this is one of those cards that when your opponent attacks you with 4 open mana, because in Limited you're either bestowing or attacking immediately, it's a huge blowout. It's going to make combat really unique, especially because, like, if you look at the whole format of combat tricks, it's like +2s the whole way.
Right.
So giving the ability to give 2 creatures +1/+1 is going to be this huge shift in combat tricks for white decks.
Oh, we're going to see some better Strive cards soon. This card is unbelievably sweet and limited. Now, a Crow Mastiff, probably not as good in other formats, but in this format, which I think you have a lot of what you call battle cruiser magic, this card's a lot better. You know, it's you know, when people are monstrosity to 8/8s and 9/9s or whatever, the doggy will hold them back.
Oh, I mean, that's just big. Like, if you look at Limited, a lot of turns are like, turn 5, bestow onto something and have this bigger guy. Now I have the biggest creature on the board. If your opponent plays a Crone Mastiff, I mean, that's not going to be a strategy anymore. Like, sometimes instead of it's always correct to bestow, it's probably not going to be. It's probably better to just put the creature in play.
Right.
So I think that this is going to do a lot more in Limited than people look at it like at first sight it just looks like an Orzhov throw that wasn't even that good back in in Ravnica block.
I was gonna say like a guild pack, right?
Yeah, I guess now I realize that was like 8 years ago.
I know, it was bad. I was looking today, I'm like, man, I'm old.
Yeah.
They haven't reprinted Recollect since like 10th edition, because there's a Recollect S card, and I'm like, oh, that reminds me of Recollect. Oh yeah, printed in Ravnica, and not printed since 10th edition. Hashtag old.
But I think this card is going to have a heyday in this format.
Absolutely. I think he's a very solid limited card that would be a lot worse in other formats, but it was actually much better because of the format he's in. Armament of Nyx.
I really
Excellent card.
I love this cycle. Like the first time I saw it, you know, I've never designed Magic cards, especially I haven't designed multiple sets. And I feel like, you know, you got to give them credit for always being original. And even if, you know, an ability is just a combination of 2 different abilities, it's still a new ability.
Sure.
And but these cards are awesome with the enchantment cycle. Like being able to be a proactive card on your guys and a reactive card against them is always super strong, even if it just seems like they're 2 subtle effects.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful sort of amalgam of what you want to do. It gives you options, it gives you choices. I mean, you know, we're going to reach a point in Magic, and we've reached that in some degree, in that a lot of spells are just kind of like this weird little tweak and like a little bit different than this, and the cost is a little bit different here, and this ability and that ability are kind of sandwiched together. But when you get those types of options, it makes the game more interesting and more dynamic, because, you know, oh, my enchantment creature can be ridiculous, or I can stop your Pelucranos, you know, that your sweet, like your best rare in your sealed pool. I don't foresee this in Constructed, but in Limited, this is what you want to be.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great card in Limited, especially if you subtly set up boards where you put an enchant creature on and then start building it up, and then all of a sudden in one hit you just kill them because you just got double strike. Or if you actually just have to play defensive, like the decks that are more controlling, less bestow based, can simply just use this as a removal spell, especially if they're hitting in the air or something.
Oh, absolutely. So, Banishing Light, yeah, baby, give me that Oblivion Ring.
I was blown away when I saw this card. Which shouldn't have shocked us, because every single card that's like an Oblivion Ring effect or Detention Sphere effect or Mesmeric Fiend effect, Fiend Hunter effect, they're all getting, you know, fixed.
They're all getting their new sweet template that they should have had to start with, and blah, blah, blah. Because no ridiculous tricks that break Moto.
Oh yeah, they just reminded me of like the old lifelink rules. It's like, all right, so I'm gonna play my Detention Sphere, but in response I'm gonna bounce it.
Yeah, and then you go like, let me explain the rules to you.
Yeah.
And the new player's like, you totally just cheated me. That's not cool. And these new templates never allow that to happen. They never allow this weird like, let me show you how the rules works moments.
Yeah, and we've seen since Lorwyn that Oblivion Ring has almost always been in every format.
Oh yeah.
And when it rotated out, I was just like, oh, I guess Oblivion Ring's gone now. And I just like didn't think about that it's going to come back, because it should. It's like one of the most perfect spells that, you know, is good in Limited and hits Constructed. And I think that this is the thing that a lot of standard decks have been needing, especially like, you remember the Invitation I played that weird, janky Naya control deck? How good would that deck have been if you had 4 of this
needed
card?
this spell so bad. I love how they named it Banishing Light, so it's not tied to the block or anything. It's not Helios, whatever. Now, I hope they don't sort of do what they did with Ravnica, which is they named the Shocklands so they could be reprinted in other sets, and they never reprinted them in any other non-Ravnica sets. So I hope that Banishing Light does get a reprint. I expect it to. It's a terrific new template, and we'll see an infinite amount of constructed play. It's an absolute must-play in all of your Limited decks. You will love it every single time.
Oh, it's a slam first pick.
Absolutely. Dawnbringer Charioteers. Speaking of slam first picks, this card is freaking ridiculous. Seraph of Dawn was a 2/4 lifelinker for 4 mana in Avacyn Restored Limited, which was a common, by the way, real fair, Wizards. At least now this one is rare. If you heroic it once ever, it's just unstoppable. I'm actually seeing people looking at this for Constructed.
Well, I've already looked at it for Constructed, and everyone laughed at me, which I think they're all wrong, because...
I mean, you know...
And the other thing is, if you look down right here, the little, you know, the message about Dawnbringer Charioteers.
The message.
When I saw that, I was like, oh, I guess I'm going white at the pre-release. Like, I didn't know they're giving me one of these for free.
Yeah, you may have the most ridiculous 4-drop that I've seen, at least in the set, or even almost in the block.
If you don't kill it, the game is over. Immediately over.
I mean, how are you going to stop it? Like, it keeps you back in the race. Any bestow, any heroic, any target, anything makes it amazing. Card is sweet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the card could see competitive play.
It's right there. It's right there.
It is, and it's way better. A lot of people compared it to what is it, Dawn Seraph or Seraph of Dawn?
Seraph of Dawn.
Yeah, Seraph of Dawn. but it is better. I know that its original stats are that, except for in that format you had Restoration Angel competing as a 4-drop, and in this format it's way more aggressive and way more creature based. So I think that a card like this, along with like some angels or something, could just be amazing. Like Archangel of Thune.
Right, this and Archangel of Thune is what a lot of people are talking about. You know, it provides 2 devotion. I mean, you know, there's a lot of upsides to this card, and it's one that can be easily dismissed because when they give it to you for your pre-release pack, a lot of people go like, well, this card must be terrible. And I'm like, well, not really. Sometimes they have to sort of pick one. Yeah. And they might have actually picked one that was constructed worthy.
Yeah, like turn 2 Maggot Feeder, I think it's called. Is that
Brain Maggot.
Brain Maggot. Turn 3 Sin Collector, turn 4 Dawnbringer, turn 5 Seraph. Or Archangel, excuse me.
I love it.
I think that's a great curve.
I love this guy. He is an absolute monster in Limited. You will love him every time. Wow. Deicide, that artwork.
Well, the artwork is unbelievable.
Unreal good.
When I first read this, I was just like, but I thought they wanted their gods to be playable. Like, why would you print these gods?
This is, to me, the perfect Steam valve for a format. When you see them printing Shatterstorm when, you know, when we're back in Mirrodin, you know, and when we go to a set with the gods, and Wizards does this all the time. They did it in Mirrodin Besiege. Now, not Mirrodin Besiege, New Phyrexia now. Granted, the whole set got busted at one point, but when they were still in spoilers, Phyrexian Obliterator got spoiled, and people were freaking out. That card was going to take over Standard, create a new archetype by himself, be a huge force, blah, 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 and then, oh yeah, dismember. Oops. And so, you know, I think they did exactly the same thing here. They're like, here's all the new gods. Oh my God, Aerois. Oh my God, Aetherios. All this cool stuff. And Deicide.
I mean, I kind of get it. Like, I have 2 problems with this. Excuse my ignorance, but I do believe that Elspeth's, like, blade is called Godsend.
That's correct.
Yeah, why would the Godsend be sent to her to kill gods? I feel like, because that's what she's doing.
Well, but also, but think of this. It's a real clever name. You know why? Because it's God's End. Get it?
Oh, is that really the joke?
I'm not sure, but it makes a lot of sense.
Now it makes a lot more sense.
It does make a lot more sense. It depends, I guess, on how you pronounce it. But, you know, when Jason Chan, Mr. I Drew Jace the Mind Sculptor himself, does an amazing image. It's worthy of main deck play. At this point, people are playing Revoke Existence in their main deck.
Like, at least
they're going to play this better version.
Oh yeah, I mean, there isn't any real artifacts to worry about that aren't also enchantments, since all the weapons are also enchantments.
Nope.
So I can't even think. I mean, I'm not even making a joke. I think the only playable one is like Pithing Needle and Trading Post, and they're not even that playable. Like, I mean,
of course, Trading Post.
Like, there's no artifacts though, like that.
There really
do
isn't.
anything.
And they did that for a reason, you know. And it's cool to kind of live in this currently enchantment-rich world. And again, you don't want it to be a situation where it's just, you know, affinity or nothing. And I think in this case, it's gods or nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have to play gods or I can't be competitive. And Wizards are like, no, it's cool. We gave you the ultimate answer to them.
Yep, and this card is also going to do a lot of things that, like, fighting Bident of Thassa immediately for a control deck. Like, you know how when your opponent plays a Bident, you don't have a counterspell, they attack with 3 guys, they just draw 3 cards. You can kill that immediately, like, take the Thassa out immediately. The Underworld Connection's an untap and play your own Jace, so you don't have to worry about, like, do I kill theirs or draw my own cards? Like, this card will see constructed play, and it's going to be very good. Even if it's in your main deck, it still hits cards like Courser of Crufix.
Oh yeah, like this card is, again, if Revoke Existence is good enough for main deck and very good competitive decks, this is absolutely what you replace it with.
Well, sorcery is worse than instant.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. That's why they pay me the big bucks.
It is, eh? It's professional. Dictate of Heliod, probably one of the biggest limited blowouts in the whole set.
I looked at this card and I realized that there's at least going to be one time at the pre-release where my opponent's going to attack in the most weird fashion. I'm just be like, what?
What could they possibly?
Yeah, what are they doing? And then you're like, oh no.
Oh no. Permanent overrun. No.
This is super powerful. I mean,
oh man.
We've seen how good Collective Blessing is in Limited.
Oh yeah.
And if they keep pushing these back, I mean, this might be the sweet spot where it's potentially playable.
It might be. It's right on the cusp. This is another one sort of right on the cusp. But like in Limited, it is the most insane blowout. You're going to wreck your opponent's face in 8 different ways with this card. But in Constructed, it's one of those that has to live at the top of the curve. And, you know, you have to say yourself you're going to get to 5 mana in an aggro deck, which is sometimes difficult depending on how many lands you have. And in a white-based aggressive deck, you know, one of the decks I saw actually was Brian Braun-Duin was sort of brewing up with Elspeth and Heliod and, you know.
More importantly, Nykthos.
And Nykthos, yes. I was getting to that because once you have all the infinite mana from those guys, you know, you can, you know, once you make 4/3 enchantment guys with vigilance, that's a lot sexier than 2/1s, you know. So this guy has potential in constructed, but is a limited all-star first pick slam dunk.
I could not agree with you more.
Yeah, we're in agreement. That's awesome. Eagle of the Watch. He's a good man. He's a fine little bird.
He is deceptively much stronger than he looks, mostly because he's flying and vigilance, because when you bestow and put all these enchantments on it in limited, you get to block. Like, one of the big things that like black-white draft decks always wanted to do was get the board to stall out and be able to do something. And that's the deck that really likes cards like this, just because you just want the board to stall out. Even like, for example, putting the enchantment we already went past, where it's just like prevents all damage to it.
Yes, absolutely.
I guess that would be bad because you can't attack with it.
Well, it prevents all damage dealt by it. So it's more of a pacifism in that regard.
Okay, I thought it was both sides.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, when you put it on the Pelucranos, they can't even monster sit and do anything with it in that regard. And, of course, on your enchantment creatures.
Oh, that's really neat, because most of the time it's both sides. I guess I just didn't read far enough. I assumed finished it. I'm sorry.
Assumptions.
But, yeah, the vigilance, the bestowing on this guy, making a big monster that your opponent can't even deal with, that can attack and block, is one of the most powerful things you can do in a black-white-based bestow deck in limited. So I think that this is exactly where it goes. Plus 2/1 flyer for 3 is very good in this format.
Yeah, like, you're going to play it in limited. Pretty much it's on the curve. It's rare that you won't play it, I feel. You'll have to have some really good cards that are much better than it to have both evasion, 2 power, and the ability to bestow it up to
I don't think there's enough.
To a great blocker.
Yeah, I mean, I would be shocked if this doesn't make your like first 15 cards.
I agree. Eidolon of Rhetoric. I love me a Horn Turtle. Horn Turtles for the win.
I like me the actual Horn Turtle of the set, where, you know, when you target it, it taps their guys.
Oh, that card's so good.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it soon. This card actually, in limited, it kind of can either randomly hose yourself, you know, like you want it to hose them in some ways, but I think you might actually accidentally be like, oh, I can't play my combat trick because I already bestowed the thing, and bang.
Yeah.
You know, this card could actually bite you.
Oh, for sure, but I don't actually think that this is a limited card that they wanted, or even a standard card. I feel like this is another spell you get for like birthing pod decks against storm decks, and I really do believe that this could potentially spell. I mean, we've seen Ether Storm Cannon see a lot of play.
Yeah.
Whereas now you can have one as a 2-drop and as a 3-drop.
And also, this one doesn't die to Lightning Bolt.
That's another good plus.
That is a huge bonus in the world of Modern, where Lightning Bolt rules all. So I think 4 toughness was very specifically chosen here. It's probably better in Modern than it is in Standard, because there's just nothing that Standard really does that abuses multiple spells, things of that nature. But regardless, I like that it exists. I like that this is the guy in this part of the cycle.
Oh, for sure. I believe that Wizards always wants in Limited and Standard to do all the cool things. They don't want a lot of restrictive things unless they feel the deck is going to be too powerful, like Birthing Pod a couple years ago, and they had all the hate cards for it.
Grafdigger's Cage and yada yada, sure.
And Torpor. But for Modern, you want cards like this. You want cards that say, no, you cannot do that, because they do it too quickly.
Absolutely.
No game evolves. So I like this card a lot in only Modern.
Yep. It's one of those, like, probably not really great in your limited decks. You really aren't going to have to play him if you have to. So next up is Fawn of Vigor, and this is a classic terrible Magic card.
Yes, we even have better life gain effects. It's so crazy that in Standard I'm thinking, like, there's better ways to gain life if I want to. That means a card is bad.
Oh man, this is, you know, you're investing 5 mana in 7 life, and that's pretty much a terrible rate no matter what you look at in the past decade.
Just splash some green, take your 2 shock, cast Heroes Reunion, and that you're gonna have a much better day.
Yeah, feel better about it, because Fawn of Vigor, while yes, it can trigger Constellation, that's literally all it has going for it, and everything else is just a bad use of your mana, and is not a card you need to be concerned about.
It does help Devotion.
Oh, +1 Devotion.
There's always a bonus to every card now that Devotion exists.
If it's a permanent, it gives to Devotion, and there's your upside. Now, Godsend, or could be God's End.
Now it has to just be God's End.
God's End,
didn't Elspeth come here to fight for the people?
Pretty much, yeah.
So it is God's End.
I like it. It's a sweet equipment. Yes, it's Volshock Battle Gear. Yes, we get it. But, you know, Volshock Battle Gear didn't have anything else in its text box, and this one does. There are a lot of benefits to this which could see play in Constructed and Standard. I'm not really seeing it in older formats because of how restrictive it is. But in Limited, it's a huge, ridiculous high-five your neighbor bomb.
Oh, for sure. I think that
It's dumb.
Yeah, this card is super strong and limited. I would just love to play with it. I mean, what's your opponent going to do when you have 6 mana and you can like attack with like your 1/1 and they take 4 and then equip it to your other bad creature, and they can never attack into it. Like, it's impossible to attack into it.
Or you put it on the Eagle of the Watch we just saw, and you're like 5, go, and now you're never going to attack, and you don't have to spend any more mana on it because your guy already has Vigilance and they can't attack into it.
And for anyone that just joined Magic, there hasn't been a lot of good equipment lately, like good equipment.
It's true.
But when you have good equipment in limited, it feels so good. Just you always have mana, like it's a mana sink, and mana sinks are important just to be able to always use your mana. And sometimes you think, well, equipping and re-equipping isn't really going to do a lot, but it does. You get to attack with one guy, and then you equip and make a different guy bigger, and all the variables, and you always get to manipulate them. Like, this card's a bomb in limited, and I could see it being a constructed playable card post-rotation when the format shrinks down again and it's just there on the
It's got to slow down a little bit. I agree. The Ravnica cards, the Detention Spheres, and the Sphinx's Revelation, like that stuff has to go out for this type of sort of slower card to really shine. But the fact that you don't even need to deal damage to exile those creatures is huge. It means that no matter what it is they're attacking with, it's going to be exiled. Now, the whole thing about the cards exiled can't be cast and blah, blah, honestly, that's probably for flavor reasons. It's kind of silly. It will never really impact constructed. It never has. Nothing that's ever said, you know, because you've exiled such and such, people can't play things.
I feel it's
never hit anything.
I feel the reason is like it's because that is gone forever, the legendary rule kind of thing. Like if you kill a god with this because it's God's End, they're not getting to play another god.
Right, which is great. And really, again, thematic. I like the story part of it, but in terms of like the real world play, in limited or even in constructed, I don't see that second ability ever coming.
They just really like their mythics to have a lot of text, so they added some.
They put words on there. Like, you know what this needs? Words.
Yeah, because we don't want to
just pour the words bottle all over it. And here we are. So, Harvest Guard Alcedes.
Our first constellation card.
Woo! Now, constellation is a keyword, or however you want to call it, a keyword, I think is the right term.
Yes.
That doesn't really need to exist. It exists so Wizards can be like, hey, does stuff. You see, enchantment does things. Enchantments that do stuff.
And people know what constellations are, so they're like, oh, they're star people.
And and it's Nyx. Like, it's very thematic. I understand that part, and I appreciate that. I don't really like keywords for the sake of keywords. Honestly, I think there's going to be some, there's so much in the lexicon of Magic that we can only hold so many things in our brain for what words mean what. But still, it's nice that we have a little reminder.
I mean, I play Magic for the nuts and bolts, right? The Crit of Anacast, the Power Toughness, the text box.
Yep.
But I still would not like every card to just say trigger, and then stuff,
But like name of trigger keyword / thing.
Activated ability, this. Triggered ability.
Exactly.
They have a little flavor. It's nice. Like, I do agree that this is just a come into play ability that you could literally just chop it off and the card will function fine.
Yeah, if the word constellation didn't exist on any of the cards that have it, they would all work just fine.
Magic would not change.
Magic would not change. Nothing even in the set would change. If anything, it just sort of helps you remember that these cards do things and that you want to trigger them. Now, Harvest Guard Alcedes themselves, I mean, it's okay. It's not a ridiculously awesome ability to prevent all the damage that's going to be dealt to this guy, or because, you're going to just attack and, maybe they'll be able to block it or maybe they won't, but sometimes that just doesn't matter on a 2/3 for 3.
Yeah, blocking never really happens in this format, I guess. The only time it will come up is when their toughness matches your power and the same goes on both sides, and you want to get damage in, but you don't have a trick. Because when you attack in this limited format, it's tough to block sometimes. So, like, you get to play your enchantment creature, give it protection, and attack. And there's a few blowouts for, like, instant speed.
And we'll see some in Strive. There's a lot of Strive cards that just, even in common, that were sort of designed to give you the ability to blow out, or give you the ability to sort of go over your opponent after they've made a wall of some sort. And this is a card that sort of tries to help with that to get one of your big battle cruisers in, but is kind of mediocre.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be... I mean, it will be playable because I have definitely played 2/3s for 3.
Minotaur stats, if you will.
Yeah, Minotaur stats just for some decks. And this is a white one, so I do think it will be playable, but it's not going to be great.
Right. Lagona Band Trailblazer.
Well, at first when I saw this card, I was like, finally, a common one-drop heroic creature for white. But then I realized that having that one extra power is pretty relevant.
It could be. Now, the white-green heroic decks are generally, at least in my estimation, are some of the best draft decks that you could have in the format as it existed with one of the gods. Or white-blue, yes. So, you know, basically things that are heroic and based around white. So I think this guy actually could be a lot better than he looks. You know, I think the red one, the Satyr Hoplite, is better. It's just the red 1/1 that has the same ability. But white has a ridiculous amount of heroic triggers, and I think this guy could get, you know, turn into a 3/7 really fast.
Yeah, I mean, the one benefit of this is this format is very aggressive. So if you don't want to set up with him, or if you're just taking a couple turns to get on the board, he does block very well in the early game. And that's usually important in the first couple turns because of Minotaur decks or just the hyper-aggressive decks that are just trying to play some early creatures. He's going to stem a lot of the bleeding, and if you, like, heroic, one bestow onto him, he just becomes like a 3/7 or a 4/8, and it's so hard to get past him.
It really is. Like, this is a guy who, he has a lot of potential, and it's one of those things where I feel like I've kind of underestimated heroic a little bit and not really want to do it this time. I want to be like, you know what, I've seen some insane heroic white decks, and this is a guy, this is sort of the one drop that you would want in those decks. It stops all the early beats, but if you get the heroic going, turns into a 1/5 or a 2/6, like that actually becomes really relevant over the long term.
Oh, for sure.
Launch the Fleet. Oh, heart is sweet.
So, one of my favorite arts from the set, one of my favorite converted mana costs from the set, I just think it's a win more. It's like,
Brad,
when you're going to attack with like 5 creatures and you have 6 mana.
I don't think so. I think this card actually helps you seal the game out than it does win more, quote unquote. This is one of those where, you know, if you have 5 creatures, they probably have 3 or 4. And they're probably matched up pretty evenly-ish. Or, you know, there's a reason there's a stalemate. There's a reason you have that many creatures, at least in my estimation when it comes to limited. Either you have 5 creatures and they're just dead, or you have 5 creatures and they've got enough to stop you, whether it's Sedge Scorpions or whatever it is. And this is the ability for you to go, like, get you with everybody and then get you with some more. Well, actually, you got to do it first. You got to sorcery first. Sorcery the thing, and then get you with everybody. And because you have all those extra guys, that gives you the ability to go above and beyond and kill them.
Well, in reality world, where some games of limited, both players just have a single creature because they do this thing called interact with each other.
I can't hear you. Man, or Christmas Land music's playing.
Or bestow upon each other the whole game. So both players just are staring at 1 creature each or maybe 2. This card just makes 2 1/1s, and it doesn't have any capabilities on defense. So
no, it doesn't.
That's my issue with this card. So don't just take this thinking it's just a slam dunk first pick.
I don't know if it's a slam dunk first pick. All I'm saying is this thing has a lot of potential because it can stop stalemates in ways that few cards can. But granted, there's a lot of ways in this set to stop stalemates. A ton of them, honestly.
Yeah.
Most of them begin with the word strive dash.
Yeah, and we will see that.
Speaking of this one, strive dash. But still, I think that's a lot of what those strive cards are doing, honestly, is letting you sort of break the parity.
Oh yeah, and that's a great thing to have. I think every set should have a lot of those effects that are unique and fun and have a keyword, as opposed to just be deluge effects or things that we've seen in the past.
Also
where it's like, tap all your opponent's guys. All your guys get unblockable on +1/+0. Like all your cards get +3/+3 and trample. Like all these cards that used to be the cards that broke stalemates. Now Wizards is finally getting more unique with them.
Right, they're getting a little bit more clever. Now, granted, this does trigger all of your heroic abilities.
It does, and triggering all your heroic guys is great. Like I think the card
in white,
is cool.
which is really important.
Yes, I think this card is cool, and it could be fun, and it might be good. But for the most part, don't just first pick it and think it's going to win you every game.
I wouldn't say that either. I would just say it's a very good limited card. I would love to see this in constructed. Trust me, I would love to see this in constructed. I mean, I'm a man who loved Malicious Bride probably more than most, but, you know, I'm a little trepidatious there. However, I do want Tom Ross to take this card and put it in his crazy Boros aggro deck with Mana Confluence and just get all the people and smash all the faces.
Yeah, I mean, there's even a 3-color heroic deck that I played in a Versus video a couple weeks ago that I would have tried this card if it had been spoiled by the time that I played it.
Sure.
Just because it triggers everything as opposed to just being the ones that only hit 2. Like this can hit every single creature on the board or make more creatures for me.
Right.
And then I have the white soldiers and the red soldiers from a Crowan Crusader, and I just get to go to town on their life total.
A Crowan Crusader was, you know, made for a card like this.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. Leon, an Iconoclast, again, an awesome heroic white creature, excellent stats, great ability.
Yeah, this is one of those cards that I'm going to want to first pick right off the bat just to see how good it is because like, it's such a level of being able to destroy. Like, you look at these stats, and you're like, it's a 3-2, but the only way to trigger it is heroic, so you're going to bestow to make it a monster, kill theirs in the process, and that's super powerful. So I think that this card is potentially first pickable. Have to see how the format develops. But.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go straight like, wow, but I would certainly be really happy to get this, second or third or what have you. Again, great stats. It doesn't, when you trigger it and you destroy one of their enchantments, it's, like you won. Like at that point, he's not only paid for himself, he's done above and beyond that. So. Well,
I think it could be first pickable because so back, we have to go far back for this argument, but like the Mirrodin block, and even both Mirrodin blocks where you had Viridian Corruptors and Viridian Shamans, which were just 2/2s for 3 mana that came into play and destroyed artifacts in artifact-based sets.
Right.
Now, I think that they're moving away from cards like that, especially in this set because it's all about targeting. So they want the Viridian Shaman of this format to have the ability to get targeted.
Yeah, I was going to say there actually is no Viridian Shaman in this format. The 3 mana 2/2 that enters the battlefield and destroys an enchantment. Yeah. This doesn't exist in this block. However, they let you sort of work that in while still having the great 3/2 for 4 mana.
Yeah, and being part of the theme of having to target to get your heroes online. And I think that this is powerful. Like, if your opponent plays this, like, bestowing looks pretty stupid next turn because you're like, I can play this game all day, buddy. Bestow my guy, attack you.
I got this all day.
Yeah.
Nothing but goodness. Mortal obstinacy. Obstinacy? Obstinacy.
I'm not going to try.
You know what? It's my job to say the words. I'm trying to say the words.
He just chose to. I don't know why it's always his job, but I will always gladly give it to him.
And I am okay with that. Now, I actually think this is really good. There's a whole cycle of these things. The red one destroys an artifact, and it's terrible because there's no artifacts in this format, or there's very few. Whereas here, this thing could actually hit one of the relevant bestow creatures or the enchantments that they have. There's a bunch of great enchantments in this set that you could target. And it just makes the creature sort of, particularly in the early game, just big enough to where they're not going to block it, and you're able to get in and ideally kill one of their enchantment creatures.
Yeah, it's a great enchant creature that hits a heroic guy early in the game, just for that fact that if they have an enchant creature or an enchantment in play, if you enchant a creature with this and attack them, and get a trigger, it's probably big enough for just that one swing. So if they chump block and kill your guy, you still got a 2 for 2. If you got to deal damage, not only did you trigger your heroic, but for 1 mana you killed an enchantment. So because there's not a lot of instant speed removal outside of like Voyage's End and Triton's Tactics and things like that, in the early game you're going to be able to kill that early enchant creature or enchantment creature.
Right, and then again, we just looked at Leonin Iconoclast right next to Mortal Obstinacy, like. That alone is like, okay, I'll enchant it and kill that thing, and then I'll attack you, and then I'll sack it and kill that thing. Like, this card has potential to be very, very powerful in the right play. Nyx Fleece Ram, so good.
So how good is this card? Because I need to see it played. I've never seen a wall. Like, I put it in a lot of cards in my sideboard of last week's article.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, it does feel very good against aggressive decks. Like, this is what I want.
Just blocks all the things and gains you life. I mean,
and yeah, when you're in a stalemate against an aggressive deck, the 1 life a turn feels like it compounds and compounds, and like if the opponent just can't, it's going to stop the decks from burning you out from nowhere because it just keeps gaining you life, so it keeps them on the clock the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, like, and even look at that toughness, 0-5.
There's no dismember in this set.
Ain't no dismember. Like, Mizium Mortars doesn't kill it. It blocks literally almost all the major creatures below 4 mana, the Loxodon Smiters, and even blocks the Gorkland Rampagers. I mean, Boon Satyrs. I mean, all the things. Like,
Let's be honest.
Is sweet.
There's something that went wrong if it's blocking a Gorkland Rampager.
Well,
let's just be honest. I think our opponent screwed something up.
But at the same time, I can also see, but there's times when the red-green aggro deck, they just run out the Gorkland Rampager because they got Supreme Verdict out, and you're like, all right, 4/4 Trailbreaker for 4, go. And they go, all right, Ram, go. And you're like, oh, sadness.
Yeah.
Such sadness.
And against like these mono red aggro decks that are coming out, or even like the white-green decks, it's just able to block these early creatures, forcing them to put more creatures on the board, gaining a couple life and then Supreme Verdicting, or playing it after Verdict. Or even Anger of the Gods. I have this in like a Night Control Shell too, like in the sideboard. I think it is good. Now limited, this is exactly the opposite of what I want limited.
Don't play. I mean, limited is bad. It's like your 23rd card when you like feel bad and you're like, I guess.
If you're one of those guys and you'll know who you are, if you just like drawing magical cards and being like, I don't care how fast this format is, I'm gonna play
whatever.
I'm gonna play that blue card that potentially will let me draw 7 cards and then die next turn after I discard it.
Exactly.
This is the card for you.
Well, this is actually a card I can actually see better in your sideboard. You know, this is a card you want in your sideboard that when you play a very aggressive deck, you can bring it in, but it's not one you want to start with that you want to run in on turn 2, you know, on the play, and you just look terrible. But in constructed, like, just imagine having 2 of these things out, like gaining 2 life a turn and
Why
blocking
do we have
everything.
to have 2? Why can't we just say 1?
I want to have 2. Imagine 3, 4, like 4,
5. Head home because you're cheating because you put this is your stance.
No, because you drafted 5 of them.
Oh, limited. Sorry.
That's why.
Because we're playing 5 main.
Why not? Look, if it's the all Flyers, all Nyx Fleece Ram deck.
To be fair, if I was getting 5 life a turn, I don't see a lot of people beating that.
You know, with your 05s, block again. The toughness here was actually the most surprising thing for me. I was like, wow, that's 5 toughness. I was expecting an 04. I was expecting a very Wall of Omens-esque type stats where you get, okay, it's a Wall of Omens, they gain to life every turn instead of drawing you a card. It'll still block all the early creatures.
Well, you see, in Theros, they're prone to steroids, so you just have to have, you know, tougher skin to be able to deal with all these creatures.
Nice. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Prone to the roids. Oppressive Rays. One little tiny ghostly prison just for you.
It's interesting. I think cards like this tend to not be as good as you would think, but against early, like if you have inevitability, just like with the sheep, like if you think that your opponent's just not going to be able to beat you in the late game, cards like this can come in just to make sure you don't die in the early turns. I
mean, maybe it's again, it's sort of an extreme case. I don't really like these cards much because when you draw them late, you feel terrible. Like there's just no utility for this in the late turns, the turn 9, turn 10.
Unless you need to trigger heroic.
Yeah, and if you're triggering heroic so you can pay 3 to attack with your own guy, like something just went terribly wrong. Yeah. You have like the worst heroic enablers ever if Oppressive Rays is where you're going with that. So this is one of those, essentially I wouldn't know if I call it a trap card, but I would certainly call it like it's not quite as good as you may even think it would be. I can see it being a trap because it does look like it's going to have a high impact on a game, potentially, and it's annoying. It's like, do you bestow and not attack or block this turn? Like, it can do some things. I don't think it is bad. In aggressive heroic decks, I can see it being fine because they're always trying to stabilize in the late turns, so you just get to neutralize a guy for like 3 turns. Sure. For 1 mana. So, I mean, there are going to be games where this is just a better version of Swords to Plowshare and Path to Exile. It's going to be really nice. I mean, where this card actually shines is when you're on the, you're on their aggro plan and you're trying to get in there and they tap out for something sweet. And you go, okay, Oppressive Rays, you're not blocking this turn, get you. Yeah. And then they're not going to be able to block next turn unless they leave open 3 mana. So that kind of chokes them on mana. It's not that this is a no upside card. It's just that it's very small, limited space where it can actually shine. Exactly. But I think it'll see some play. Oreskos Swift Claw. Wizards, they're just like making 2 mana 3/1s. Like, here you go, you get a Skyjack, and here you go, Spirit of the Labyrinth, and blah, blah, blah. Like, Blade of the Sixth Pride from Future Sight was like, people were freaking out, man. A 2 mana 3/1 with no drawback, that's never happened ever. Blah, 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 blah. And nowadays, it's like, I mean, I was still like, yeah, but that's these days. Like, I remember when Watchwolf came out, and I was like, oh my. Oh, yeah. Are you kidding me? I'm like, 3 for 2 mana? Oh, like, yeah. That is overpowered. Wizards is making these super powerful creatures. Because that card was really, it was previewed by Flores, and he was like, this card's going to be amazing and constructed, and it was. I played it for a whole year. Absolutely. It was fantastic and constructed, but, now we're a very spoiled bunch. Well, I liked when Fleece Mainline came out, and I was just like, this card seems really good. I know, right? And everyone at home was like, eh. Like, man, I don't know. You take your little Watchwolves with your little abilities and do whatever you want. I'm like, what? I was talking about. You know how much better this is? It's amazing. There's like, I never died to it. And it's like, it's not supposed to kill you, but it can because it has a sweet ability. I think Fleece Mainline is going to get there after Ravnica goes away. It's already been there, man. It's getting there. I've done well with that card. He's a fine man. He's going to be even better. He is a little bit better than the Oreskos Swiftclaw. He is. This card's great and limited, by the way. It is, because really 3 power just allows you to force their bestows to at least have 4 toughness. And yes, it has only 1 toughness, so it can be blocked by anything, but in this format, every 2-drop
you know, trades with each other. This card can potentially trade up. So when they're trying to bestow, and if you have removal spells or just an early aggressive plan, this card can be a great 2-drop.
Absolutely. You know, in a format that is very much based around tempo and trying to get ahead of your opponents and putting them on the back foot and yada yada, a 2-mana 3/1 is where you want to be, and should just do perfectly again on your second turn. This is the card I want to play.
I mean, I've been so content with Traveling Philosophers, so like I cannot argue with the 3/1.
Let's just do the strict upgrades.
Yeah.
Thanks. Phalanx Formation, another one I was talking about earlier. A Strive card. This one's uncommon. That just ends games. Just blows people out.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I feel like this card wants to be with another card though, like in combination with a trick plus this.
Sure.
Just for the fact that I don't think just giving your whole team double strike is particularly that great.
What?
It really isn't.
Did you hear the words that just came out of your mouth?
Let's break this down. Let's break this down.
This is a white-green deck. You're going to have big, chunky monsters. You're going to look at this guy gets double struck, and that guy gets double struck, and you get double struck, and check under your chair, and you get double struck. This card is awesome.
I don't have any double strike.
Come on, this really would lead to ridiculous blowouts?
It will lead to some blowouts, but again, these are the cards that I'm scared to play because guess what, Evan? You have an opponent. There's an opponent that could potentially do this to you.
They're in a little bowl over there, and they're just swimming around. That's all they're doing. Okay, because my opponents are going to watch all my heroic triggers happen, and then all my guys are going to get double strike, and it's just going to be GG's.
All right. I'll give it to you. I think this card is very powerful, but I also see it. I guess I just don't like cards that potentially are do nothings.
I mean, I guess.
But I guess every card in this format is kind of like
isn't that right? Like every card, you must have something, or it just does nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that. I mean, and this is, you know, I feel that Wizards put these Strive cards in to let you, you know, break the parry and get your sort of edge on and be able to end the game because, you know, once you blow this thing out for 7 mana, like the game's pretty much over, or you should have an insane advantage by the time it resolves.
Or even like they blocked all their creatures to trade and you just blow them out with that. Yeah.
Sure, whatever. Now you have nothing. You know, my one spell.
I mean, think about it this way on defense too. You can always just like give your whole team double strike and then triple block a creature to kill it like a big bestow creature.
Yeah, some crazy battle cruiser thing that they've built up that you have to deal with or you're going to die. Well, okay, we'll Phalanx Formation these guys and just get you.
Yeah, I do. Maybe I'm undervaluing Strive in the sense of I didn't think about like hitting so many different heroic guys, and that's the issue with heroic decks that they've been missing is you don't want to take too many heroic guys because then your whole team is just heroic guys that you don't have enough spells to trigger all of them.
Exactly.
Whereas, but this set can trigger up to like 3 to 4 in a bunch of different cards.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, while it is, yes, replicate plus multi-kicker, whatever, Strive I think is actually just one of the most perfect mechanics that they could have had
for
in
this set. Yeah.
Just the most beautiful thing that you need to, like, I need to be able to target my guys, but I need to target more of them. Here you go. Card's awesome. Query Colossus would be absolutely insane if it wasn't 7 mana. 7 mana is a lot.
7 mana is a lot, but 7 mana that kills a creature unlimited, and this is exactly what I want because when they have the battle cruiser, not only does it block all the riffraff that falls off of the battle cruiser once it dies, but it is just a huge body that kills a creature. And I do like the fact that like it puts it so far down for planes. I think that's really sweet.
It is really cool. And there's some other ones out there that we'll get to that, you know, trigger off the number of basic lands of that type that you have. And again, Query Colossus is just like, wow, it's a terrific creature. It really is great and limited, but it is expensive. And it is a card that you don't, like, you know, if you open 2 of these, it's not as good as 1 of these. Does that make sense? You know,
well, no, because then you can target the other one and then you can keep playing them on each other.
You run with that. But, you know, it's one of those things where when you have unlimited, like, you know, this, you have an awesome 7-drop, and you're like, all right, and then you, like, crack a pack, and you're like, another one. Because you can't really play the second one because it's too much. You're basically going to mold a 6 when you draw one of these in your opening hand.
I mean, I completely agree with that, but in the same sense, when you play a control decks need a finisher that also can stabilize, and this is just it.
Sure.
It kills one of their best creatures no matter what, because the planes doesn't need to deal with their power like the blue creatures. It's just how many cards down it goes.
Right.
And so it should at least go 4 turns, which should be enough time to stabilize before that bomb comes out. Plus, you know what they draw that turn, so you can spend the rest of the time setting up for that turn.
Sure. I'm not saying that this card is bad by any means. I'm just saying that this card is not quite like, you know, slam dunk, high five, even that much of an early pick based on even what we saw already. You know, there's plenty of cards that I've seen before this one that I would pick over it. And,
for sure.
And as a result, at 7 mana, great effect, super powerful, great card at 5/6. It's good, it's not great.
I can't argue with that.
Now, Reprisal all the way back from Alliances.
I only have one issue with Reprisal.
What?
They should have just went with the old art because it was so sweet.
The old art was sweet.
Yeah, go back and check that out. It's awesome. But
you will like it. But this card is just good, excellent wonderfulness. In a world that we build battle cruisers, this card's fantastic.
I mean, I want to move away. Yes, this is going to be a limited all-star, but I want to even move away from limited and just talk about its implications in standard because blue-white can kill Obzodat now. Ooh. They can kill Mistcutter Hydra.
It's true.
They still get destroyed by Stormbat Dragon, but this is a huge move in the ability for blue-white to be able to deal with specific threats, because that was the issue that blue-white control always had, and why it moved to Esper was because you would just present weird, unique threats against it, like, I'm going to play a Planeswalker, and then I'm going to play an enchantment, and then I'm going to play an Obzodat or a Dragon or a Mistcutter Hydra, and then I'm going to play an Underworld Connections. Wow. And they would just always have problems dealing with all these weird angles, but this card stems a lot of that. It kills their big creatures, it kills Obzodats where they normally couldn't do that. A Mistcutter Hydra can come down and attack, and you can immediately answer it.
That is actually probably the biggest one for me. Yeah. And that's, when I watch SCG Live and I see these blue-white devotion decks, and they're great against everything but Mistcutter Hydra. And Mistcutter Hydra is like, it's a 5/5 Mistcutter Hydra, the guy's on a 3-turn clock or whatever it is, because there's not much that blue-white devotion can do at that point but just race and hope they can get there, or hope that they have Supreme Verdict or whatever.
I understand, but I do feel that blue-white devotion is going to not be a thing anymore.
Really?
Because, well, Deicide.
Deicide's
the
thing,
issue.
But it is an issue, no doubt. And, of course, there's Banishing Light that also comes into play that you could also see being played over Reprisal because it hits more things. You can Banishing Light the Mistcutter. You can't Banishing Light the Obzodat. That's actually a great point. But
yeah, they'll both see play in the sense that I think a blue-white control deck wants more than 4 Oblivion Ring effects.
Sure.
But Reprisal will be a sideboard card that every single blue-white deck should play, and then that'll slowly just make, when I've been designing decks lately for the new standard format, I'm having less Mistcutter Hydras and having less Obzodats, and I'm moving more towards tempo-based and more towards earlier threats and more disruption and more ways to protect myself from Supreme Verdict and Oblivion Ring effects, because you can't just play a Mistcutter Hydra and win the game anymore.
Right. This card says no, in a way that Mistcutter Hydra always said yes.
Yes.
So, but yeah, terrific card, awesome and limited again. All these monsters that we're showing you now, I'm going like, oh, this card's amazing, blah, blah, blah. This thing probably kills them.
Yeah, and it's going to be very good and limited. This is a first pick.
Yes, it is. It's very good. Sightless Brawler is awesome. I like this card a lot. In a world that's based in tempo, and a world where you like the bestow is good, or just playing it on turn 2 after you play a 1-drop is good. You can get blown out with this card a little bit when you bestow it, because your opponent can just kill your other guy, and then you can now your now huge dude can do nothing.
There's 2 things about this card. One is I've never seen the bad effects of cards. What would you call negative sides?
Drawbacks, if you will.
Drawbacks. Sorry, I'm still early in the morning.
Whatever.
Like the drawbacks, I've never seen them shift colors. Where this is a red drawback now it's a white drawback. But
this is the Mog Flunky's ability.
I just want to see that one game. Like the unique things about bestow is like your opponent just has 1 creature in play and they can't kill you. And you're like, bestow?
Give it the Sightless Brawler.
All right, kill all their little guys. No. They can still block.
Oh, it can still block.
No,
yes,
but now it can't attack
anymore.
And now you just keep trying to kill all their other guys.
Right. I mean, the same drawback that can be for you, whereas they kill the other guys that you didn't, that you had on your side, can be the same for them. It's where you're like, all right, the only thing I can do is have you not attack and then use my unblockable guy to get you or whatever.
To be honest, we'll get to that in black, but my favorite thing is bestowing their creature for the win. I just those are the unique games. I mean, maybe I played too many games of Magic and I just want to see all the cool stuff happen.
Gnarled Scarhide is a fine man, and we'll talk about him later. But Sightless Brawler is an excellent pick. Should be in all of your draft decks / sealed decks, as long as you have a curve. Only if you have a very, very slow deck that doesn't get started to 3 or 4 would this guy not get there.
Oh, for sure. And all the white decks want to be super heroic and they want as many 2-drops as possible. So this is just another one of those. And it won't see any constructed play because there's already a million 2-drops for 2-drop white creatures that are better than this.
Yep, basically. That's it. Skybind is a lot of words, and there's Constellation on it.
And it doesn't really do anything. I mean, okay, so it can reset a Planeswalker, but it's at the end step, so you can't activate it.
Right.
It can reset Oblivion Rings into Tension Sphere, so that's a thing.
Well, the new Oblivion Ring-ish, yeah. I mean,
no, it's not enchantment. Sorry, it's not enchantment. You can't even target enchantments. So you get come into play abilities, so you can blink out, like, for example, you can blink out a Mistcutter Hydra.
You know, I think what we're trying, that's adorable. I think what we're really trying to do is to come up with some way to really give you a clear picture of a Johnny card, and that's not how Johnny cards work. You know,
and, well,
like,
no,
Johnny cards are just like,
I guarantee you there's enough people out there watching, they're like, Evan and Brad. All right.
Whoa,
so this is what this is supposed to do. Let me teach you guys a lesson.
This is what this card is actually made for.
So when you're in a five-person commander game.
Exactly. And I do this, or I play this enchantment, do that thing, and then, you know, I create this infinite loop and yada yada.
Yeah.
So again, this is a terrific Johnny card for those people who love to find the niches and sort of exploit them.
Yep.
And this is a card that doesn't do anything beyond that.
Otherwise
it's bad.
It is something that I will not look at again.
Yep.
Unless I open it, sadly, in a.
And then we go. I bet it looks great foil. I bet it looks great in foil.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Now, Sky Spear Cavalry is awesome. If nothing else, it's a 4/2 flyer. If that's how you have to look at this card and be like, would I pay 5 mana for a 4/2 flyer all day?
You just
But
like
now
take
I
this
can
early.
bestow it and just crush.
You take this card very early and limited, and you win with it. I don't know what else I'm supposed to say. It has double strike and flying, and there's things called bestow in this format. There's nothing I can teach you more than that. Here's the fish. You can have it. Like, yes, I don't need to teach you anything.
You take it and you eat it and you love it. You just smash and bestow and smash and give it cool things and strive it and smash.
If they kill it, then you have to start playing Magic again. But until that moment happens, you just kill them potentially the next turn.
Yeah, I mean, basically low toughness, but you could also think of it as a white air elemental, or however you need to wrap your head around how good this card is. It's terrific. Stonewise Fortifier. Stonewise.
I'm going to go with Fortifer. Mr. Fortifer.
Mr. Fortifer. But really, 2 mana 2/2. He's a good man. He's a fine dude.
I don't know. I mean, he's out in the middle of nowhere, and I don't think if I saw him, I would get that close, though.
Yeah, I don't know how much he's fortifying, like randomly raising columns and fields.
Like a traveling philosopher, for example, I would go and talk to a traveling philosopher. Yeah. That would be a sweet bro. Like, he'd probably tell me a lot of cool stories. This guy just sitting out in the middle of nowhere, doing this and having the wind going around, he's not a sweet bro. I would just not want to go talk to him.
Yeah, but in a world where you're playing traveling philosophers, you will play Stonewise Fortifier because, yes, the ability is kind of marginal and may never come up ever or whatever, but it's still on the curve. It's still a fine man.
This is the kind of ability that exists to keep you alive sometimes. There's going to be games where you're like, the only way I win is by holding 5 mana up every turn and blocking this big monster that you made.
Yep.
And you have to find a way around that.
Yeah.
That is a real thing of Magic. So yes.
Basically they monster us their Arbor Colossus or whatever, and you're like, only thing I got is blocking 5 mana. Blocking 5 mana.
Yeah, this is one of the abilities that is just there to live in those very fringe moments. So, I mean, I like abilities like this because they're not going to be relevant 99% of the time, but the time that you win, you get to go up to your buddies out to match and be like, so,
like, dude,
guess what happened this last game?
You won't believe what happened with this Stonewise Fortifier thing going on, which is terrific. So, good early, good late, good Magic card.
Yep.
Supply Line Cranes. This card is the bomb diggity in Limited. This card is sweet.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, this is one of the cards that I know saying this sounds stupid, but I just wish it had flash.
Oh, come on.
No, because it's like a supply thing. Like, they're swooping in, bringing supplies to you. And, like, just think of that, like, sweet, like, 300 moment where, like, the guy's weaponless and he sees the bird coming, he just runs off a rock and they drop the spear and he just stabs the guy on the way down. Yeah, I spend my time wisely.
Exactly, you do. And that's awesome and sounds great. But it doesn't need it. That's the point. The point is that if you played it as nothing but a 3/5 flyer for 5, wow. Awesome card.
We've all been there and played 3/5s for 5 that didn't have flying. So this is just a strict upgrade on that.
Right. So not only does it let you make this other creature just big enough to get over whatever was blocking it, it allows it to be a 3/5 by itself. It's good with creatures, without creatures. It's a first pick if there's nothing like Vanishing Light is not in there or whatever.
This set's pretty good for Limited. I don't think it's
really good in Limited. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think this set's pretty good.
It's all right. Well, you got to give me a high pick. It's a very high pick.
I'll go
second or third latest.
Sure.
Card is sweet.
It is very good. But it is 5 mana. 5 mana is a lot.
I'm okay with that. We were discussing about the 2/2 double strike.
Huh?
We were discussing about the 2/2 double strike.
That card wins games.
This card wins games.
No, this card just looks pretty and is annoying. That card wins games.
Come on. You're going to win games with Supply Line Cranes. Tethmos High Priest. I'm surprised this is not rare. That's actually my #1 reaction of this card. was like, it does what? And it's not rare?
So I won't lie. I spent a majority of my free time in the last week thinking about this card. I mean, it seems like my kind of card, right? Works well with sacrifice outlets like Cartel Aristocrat. Works well with Voice of Resurgence.
This guy.
And I was like trying to build heroic / like I first thought like I want to build a Cartel deck, like an Aristocrat deck, and I'm like, well, I need cards to target this, and like Orzhov Charm doesn't seem that good. It's like I'll put this one in my hand and bring this one back. And then I thought of like hexproof decks where this is just another card that you can potentially enchant onto to get creatures back, like voices, and relieve the tension on always having to have like a good creature in play.
Right.
And I just came to the conclusion that this isn't uncommon, mostly because it takes a lot of finesse and a lot of correct draws in a lot of situations to be good enough. Like you don't, in standard, you don't want your 2-drops to be winning you the games like you did back when there was Blood Artists and things like that. You want your 4 or 5 drops winning the games. So like it's going to have some tension. I don't even know if it's that constructed playable. In limited, it's fine. You get your 2 drops back by bestowing onto it, which is sweet, especially because like you can play like an early bestow on a 2-drop. They trade. You get the guy back. You play this. You play another bestow. Get back the original guy.
I don't think it takes a lot of work in limited, but I think it takes a ton of work in constructed. Like it takes. I mean, you know, when something has to die in order for you to be able to get this thing, and then you have to do something else to get this thing, to get the thing that died to come back or get some value out of it. Like there's so many like rigmarole that you have to do that it's just not going to happen. I feel in constructed, but in limited it can happen all the time.
And the one thing I did realize that if Oromancer cost 2 mana, now that would have been the sweetest deck of all time. You know, enchant, get Oromancer back, then the Oromancer gets back a different enchantment, and you just keep going to town. Or if Rancor existed or something, but...
Yeah, well, it's target creature card, so... I mean, well, Rancor can target him, obviously, which is a good one, and then he comes back, and it's cool. So, yeah, again, it's just... It looks... This thing is so full of possibility.
Oh,
it takes so much work to do it.
But, I mean, it could pay off, and there could be a deck. I'm not arguing that there might not be a deck. Very well could just be a white/red Boros style deck with a lot of like pump effects, like Titan Strength and things like that. And so there could be that, but the problem is if you're trying to pump your guys, I think that a lot of the Blood Rush creatures are just better.
Yep, and we'll get to Prophetic Flame Speaker later, which I think is definitely a point to talk about. Now here is a Johnny, Mentor of Heroes. What
is wrong with people? I think that the internet has spoiled everyone, and they're like, no, I want my damn cake, and I want to eat it too. I don't care. I want the first 2 abilities that are so awesome, and then I want something better than 100 life, because guess what? 100 life is irrelevant. They're just wrong.
That's not true.
No, I mean, so if the secondary ability on a Johnny was a negative, yes, the 100 life will then become irrelevant.
Sure.
Because you're just going to keep bouncing in the tension. But because they're both upticks, you just gradually get to a moment where... Oh, look, now I have an option of gaining 100 life. Guess what I like? Options. I'm a Magic player. I like having free options, and I'm not playing this card to gain 100 life. I'm playing this card to give counters and to get Chain to the Rocks and Underworld connections and creatures and Elspeths out of my deck. So, like, now I just get this free roll of, like, now I can just play defensively and gain 100 life and then just take complete control of this game.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Card is unbelievable. Like, the second I saw it, I was on Twitter, and I'm like, card is amazing. We'll see tons of standard play, and then of course there's like, this card is terrible. I can't believe it's so bad.
Skullcracker, oh well.
Yeah, lol. I'm like, dude, this card is nuts. Like green white has never had a planeswalker. Finally got one. Like, what does it do? 2+ abilities. You know, a la Elspeth. Like it's green white card advantage, which is the #1 thing blue-based decks don't want you to have. And blue-based decks are the hardest ones that are the ones that have the hardest time dealing with this type of card. So for green white to get this type of repeatable card advantage and the 3+1/+1 counters, however you want to do it, whether it's on a hexproof creature or on the mana accelerants that you use to get this guy, a turn for a Johnny Mentor of Heroes is just the business.
Well, I realize though, through this card alone, what the people that are online saying like 100 life and this card isn't good want out of Magic. And what they want out of Magic is they want a card to just win the game for them, but make it look like they did it. So they can just piggyback off a card, and they're like,
it was actually my skill.
Yeah, it's like, you win the game, but in a really cool way.
Right.
Like, they could just put that as the ultimate, and people are like, yeah, man, sounds sweet, yeah.
Well, they made that card called Face the Mind Sculptor.
It's true.
you're winning the game in style.
Yeah, that card was not. I mean, it was a Brainstorm every turn, and Brainstorm was one of the hardest cards to play. But guess what? Brainstorm's not hard to play when you get to do it every turn
for free.
Yeah, that card was nuts.
Card was bonkers, and this card is great. Again, I don't think about this ever coming out on turn 5. I think about coming out on turn 4 or even earlier. Turn 1 Elvish Mystic, turn 2 Carriated, turn 3 a Johnny. Like either make my guys bigger because you have some sort of aggro thing going on, or I start getting card advantage immediately from there on out. I start drawing basically an extra card, a card that I want from the top 5 every turn. Good luck.
This is the kind of card that I would suggest playing Selesnya Charm and Banishing Light. Like, I have it in my Naya control deck because it gets Chained to the Rocks. I love that it can go dig for removal spells.
This is awesome.
Through Chained to the Rocks. And yeah, you want a lot of early acceleration, Voice of Resurgences if you're playing like a more aggressive deck. In the more controlling decks, it gets all your Planeswalkers, so you just can play all this removal. This card plays a lot of roles and does a lot of awesome things. So I think that this card is just going to see a ton of constructed play, and even more so after rotation. If we don't see this do that well right now, if there's ever a price dip, just snap off 3 of them. I guarantee I will have you using them,
Yeah, give us till after Ravnica at the very worst.
At the very worst, yeah.
Yes.
Like, I think that this card is going to see constructed play in the next couple months.
I agree. I mean, absolutely immediately, basically. Now, Athreos, God of Passage, is totally sweet.
Can I plead the 5th on this?
It's totally sweet until Deicide showed up, and then you were like, Wizards. You kind of printed a totally sweet God and then printed the ultimate answer, so it does nothing.
Well, this is my favorite art in the set. By far. I think it's just, the River Styx, and I just love that part of it.
Oh, yeah.
And I would love a lithograph of it. But when I originally saw it, I was just like, thank you, Wizards, giving me a Cartel.
Oh, yeah, we were all high-fiving.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine?
And I was like, it was like game time. I really felt like the internet was just like, that's Brad's job. I'm just gonna wait for Brad. Yeah, that's a Brad card.
Brad's card.
Yeah, we're just gonna wait.
You.
Yeah, and then I did. I went home and I started brainstorming. I'm just like, I got to do it for the people.
Exactly.
And
carry the banner.
And then once I figured out, I'm like, this card kind of sucks. It's very good against Supreme Verdict.
Right.
And it beats on Supreme Verdict, but black-white decks already have Zekra Necromancer, Sin Collectors, Brain Maggots,
right?
Like all these cards that just already do that for them. And I was like, I want to play with Obzedat, but Obzedat's best when you interact with your opponent multiple turns before you play the Obzedat, so then you can just blink it out and say, do your worst for that one turn.
Right.
Whereas, yes, it'll be a 5/5 the turn you play Obzedat, but then once it blinks out, it's not a guy anymore, and you're just open, but because you didn't interact with them for that one turn, you're probably behind now. And so I think the card has some potential, and I am totally hoping I'm proved wrong, but it's just not where I want to be in Constructed.
Oh, it makes me sad, man. It was so, there's just like, it has so much potential.
Well, it is the best Punisher mechanic as of yet. Like, it's the best ability for the Punisher mechanic. Like,
sure.
Those are tough options. Like, either I get this back or I'm bolting you. Like, that's your choice.
That's a great choice, particularly when you go Cartel Aristocrat and the Zathra Necromancer into Athreos, attack or whatever. It's like, what would you like to do? Because, you're going to hurt one way or another. And I think that's what's so cool about it.
And then there's tempo downsides. It's just like, well, block, I'll take my 3 because you just attacked me, and now I got to kill your guy.
Right.
Like, thanks for that.
Okay, and the guy's still just a god and doesn't do anything else.
Then you can't really be that aggressive because, yeah, you're not going to turn it on by just making these, like, lightning bolt trades or whatever.
Right. So, yeah, people are just going to be like, yeah, sure, okay. -3 life. You done?
Yeah.
Like that's the real sort of feel bad to it. Now the upside is that, you're sacking things or they're trying to Supreme Verdict and they can't take 12 life out of it and yada yada. But again, one of those that has the most awesome sort of hype value when you first see it and the most incredible possibilities. But in the real world, I can see this not getting there.
Yeah. I'm sorry, everyone.
Now to go back just a little bit, in Limited, still fantastic.
Yeah, no, I mean,
to be clear.
Well,
it's going to be good. It's not going to be bad.
I mean, the gods are pretty bad in Limited.
Okay, well, they're not going to be, all right.
I mean, I was a white-based deck after 2 packs, and I took Heliod's Emissary over Heliod. Like,
oh, that's a little sad.
Yeah. Everyone knows that the gods are just not that great in Limited because you have to be 2 colors. Yes, these are 2-color gods, but I don't want to first pick a 2-color god.
I wouldn't say first pick. I would just say it's going to be good. It's going to be really good. If you're in a black-white strat, if you're in a black-white deck, particularly in sealed, You know, it is going to be a choice at some point when people pay 3 life, whether letting you get the creature back or not. It can come up. It can.
That
impact
is true.
it.
That could have a big impact. Just constantly getting the creatures back. Every creature. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. I'll take that back. This card is probably very good in limited.
I'm of the opinion it's pretty sweet.
Yeah. It's the one static ability that's awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now Kronos actually probably argue with that a little bit.
That's true.
Lightning Bolt or draw a card. A little bit better than Athreos, but Athreos is still a fine man. Underworld Coinsmith. Okay.
I'm hoping that this is a real thing. I don't know where it goes. I tried to build black-white human shell, and it just trades with aggressive strategies and other things. But I do believe that if you can just like slow the games down uniquely, like
grind,
like to them is a potential thing. I do see that happening.
Like drain, and then drain.
And then so when you get them down to like 4, you can like all out attack them and drain them for the extra couple points needed. And it's a human. It does gain you a little bit of life.
Which is fine. You know, I think like Underworld Coinsmith into Athreos, like I don't, you know, like that's to me it's more cute than powerful.
Well, I mean, it can be cute, but like against a control deck, it is a threat on its own. You don't have to keep progressing your board because you're going to get to 3 or like 1, 2, or 3 of them every turn. And I'm not going to lie, like if your like 2-drop's job was to trade with a Rakdos Cackler, I don't mind gaining 1 life.
Right. So I gained 1 life and I traded with your
I was
Spike
going to
Jester,
trade with
Rakdos
whatever my
Cackler,
2-drop was anyway.
whatever it was going to be otherwise. And if they don't have anything, or if you're against a control deck, you know, to bash in for 2, and then basically you can just sit back behind this guy and just drain.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, well, whenever you want a Supreme Verdict, attack, drain you for 3, you know, oh, I pay 3 life. Sure. So this guy essentially begins to deal 5 damage a turn.
Well, and then the other benefit is this card works really well with cards like Rootborn Defenses. So when you pass with your mana open, you can not only like keep all your guys alive if you choose to against the Supreme Verdict deck, but they're always afraid of this ability. So you always have a mana sink to go along with those kind of protective spells. The problem with those protective spells was always that you had nothing else to do with your mana. So if they didn't play a Supreme Verdict, you would just have done nothing with your turn.
Yeah, I mean, this is a terrific mana sink for a black-white deck.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. All right, Gold Forge Sentinel. 6 mana, 4/4 flyer. How you feeling about it?
It's very mediocre, but playable. Yeah, like these are the kind of cards that when I need them, I need them. Like,
yeah, when you need some at the top, when you need a flyer, these are your guy.
And that's what he's doing. He's just waiting for the one person in the 20, pre-release drafts to need him.
Yeah,
and that's what he's doing. He's just chilling. It's a very lonely life.
It's a sad life for a Chimera.
Yeah, he'll probably play like 1 out of every 5 drafts, probably.
Yeah, something like that. You know, it's going to be one of those where you're just like, I don't need you. Like, you know, it's one of those 6 mana, 4/4 flyer. I've got these other flyers. I've got these other heroic things. I got these spells that target. I don't need an artifact creature that just kind of hangs out.
But I do believe that being an artifact creature is a benefit over being an enchantment creature in the set by far.
I agree.
So like just being an artifact can be great because a lot of the disenchant effects are just leaning towards just destroying enchantments,
right?
Instead of like, unless you're like Revoke Existence or Unravel the Aether. But I do think that you will play this card every once in a while, but you'll know. We don't have to tell you. You don't have to sit there and be like, but when do I play it? It's like, no, you'll know.
Right. A, you won't pick it early and limited in terms of draft.
Yeah.
And B, in sealed, you'll look at your deck and you'll be like, yep, that's where he goes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You're going to feel it. You're like, I need that guy at the top.
I don't have a late game. I don't have ways to win the game. I don't have evasion. I guess I'm playing this guy.
This is a card that will win you the game, legitimately.
Yeah. Or you'll lose before because your deck wasn't that good.
Absolutely. And that is the end of the white set review for Journey Into Nyx.
But it's okay. We got 4 more still.
FOMO. We got FO. I'm very excited to begin our blue Journey Into Nyx set review very soon. We'll catch you here next time for Brad Nelson.
That's me.
And Evan Irwin. We're tapping the cards
so you don't have to.
See ya.
Bye.